Denver Broncos, Mile High View, no commercials, no bullshit. So I have to ask the question and bring this back, reanalyze it, because everybody's getting into prediction mode, or we're getting further, the closer we are to the preseason, we get more and more of these predictions. Everybody gets the prediction fever. But I just want to go back in time a little bit and assess something that's been kind of poo-pooed and generally ignored, and that's the collapse of the offense. Well, the collapse of the running game at the end of the season, especially against teams that were like the worst in defending the run. Now, some of the analysts who have watched the game film noted, excuse me, no cough button, noted that Sanders being out, there was absolutely no respect for the receivers, which I have to agree, and I think that needs to be discussed here. They just put 8 in the box and said, we dare you to run or throw the football. Well, Case Keenum, blah, 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 blah. It's all his fault. I think that there was more to it than just, to blame the quarterback knee-jerk. Because, it was going a lot better when Sanders was in there. And Sanders is a lot different than the other receivers, obviously, in experience. But, Sanders, when he is healthy, he will fight for those routes, and that's how he gets open. So he's, they got to account for that. And because they have to account for him, that gives the other receivers a little bit better chance, I'd say. So, him going out, the analytics was, they put 8 in the box. They did not respect the receivers, which I don't blame them. They're very lackluster. And they definitely, that's something that prediction, will the receiving core improve? And what happens if Sanders goes out again, and the Cortland Sutton is thrust into number 1, and, so on and so forth. Of course, we got a new wrinkle with Fant, the tight end. So, he'll have to also be held accountable too, under check. So it may, in that regard, from the wide receiver, it may be a little bit more difficult to just 8 in the box kind of thing. So that, we'll see how that plays out. Again, how long will it be before Sanders gets injured? The other thing is the offensive line. By the way, Philip Lindsay did not sustain an injury until later. They had stopped in, I think, San Francisco, I think, was the number 1 worst team against the run. And they had no problem. There was no blocking on the offensive line, so they were able to get to him pretty good. And I want to discuss the offensive line again just really quick. This has to be addressed, is that, I agree with Juice, Joose, I'm assuming that's Juice, like Moose, but with a J, that, getting Munchak was huge. However, there's some really oddities going on still with the offensive line. One, the getting rid of Valdir. And I will confess, I didn't have the podcast, video, whatever, up at the time, but I was not happy with bringing in Valdir, and was very pleasantly surprised at his performance. I didn't like Valdir because Valdir himself said he was washed up due that he had injuries. He wasn't going to be the same. But he was a decent offensive lineman, probably maybe above average to serviceable, which was for the Broncos, that's huge at that time last year. But they didn't re-sign his contract. Okay. So he's gone. Ronald Leary is kind of a mystery too, because here's a guy that's, seems to be injury prone as well. Also, he is still not playing at the position he had normally been playing and playing well. He's out of that position, and I don't know if he prefers that. He's asked for that. He's been playing all along in the NFL and on the side he didn't really like. Those questions aren't answered, but Munchak still has him out of position, out of his normal. When I say the position he normally played, like with Dallas, when he was having success. But he's been injury prone too. You know, who comes in when he goes out? So, you know, just interesting aspects of you know, the offensive line. What happens when Ronald Leary goes out? Who takes his place? Also, we want to see if Munchak can work his magic with the acquisition from the Dolphins. And the scouting report on him is he's basically serviceable. He's not a marquee player, and so we want to see if this if Munchak, he was brought in from Munchak, is what I wonder. That could have been a Munchak scouting decision. So it's going to, again, you know, I want to know why is it going to break down? If it does break down with Larry going out, where, you know, who steps in? Obviously, now going back to the receivers and, you know, putting 8 in the box and not having any respect. Now with Fant, if, you know, if Sutton goes out, not Sutton, well, you know, that could happen too, but if Sanders goes out, you know, it's not just the Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton show that obviously they're going to have to account for Fant too, and we're going to have to see some play design with that. It's too bad we didn't have that at the beginning of the season last year, because all we heard was, oh, Flacco, he loves tight ends. Well, so did Case Keenum, but they wasn't allowed to use him until 3/4 of the season. But, you know, something they never do talk about at sports, and they actually get it wrong. They weren't running a play-action system in the beginning because Musgrave runs a pocket quarterback system. He was running that with David Carr. He was trying to, and you know, that's the other thing too. It's very interesting about the Broncos is that it seemed that they were always trying to reinvent Mike McCoy's offensive schemes. So it never made any sense why they went after Case Keenum when, instead of just sticking with Trevor Siemian, who's more of a pocket quarterback type, when, you know, they weren't going to run a play action system. Just odd thinking and you know, things like this by the Denver Broncos makes me question, you know, things like the offensive line. Obviously, that's going to be under the microscope come, you know, the beginning of the season. So, you know, but of course, even with success, we're going to have to see how this thing goes over the, you know, the first 6-8 weeks. You know, and like I say, my prediction was that if everybody's healthy, I would think that the offense is going to be ahead of the Denver Bronco defense. I think the defense is more of a work in progress. And then, when I go a little off topic here, Chris Harris. Now, I agree with some of the comments and that I've gotten is that I think that this is going to take care of itself one way or the other. A year after that, who knows? But just wanted to bring up the collapse of the offensive line and the running game. That was never the 11th best offense. If it was the 11th best offense, it wouldn't have had that major collapse. You know, just please, let's get out of the, you know, the Kool-Aid. So, but it's going to be interesting if there are injuries like Ron Leary on the offensive line. Who comes in? Is the acquisition from Miami? Is that going to, you know, is this guy just going to be serviceable? And then when marquee players come in, that's, you know, the same old thing again. It'd be interesting.